Well, welcome everybody. Here we are in the first evening, the launch of Startup Grind Chilliwack. It's great to have you here, and it's great to have our guest here this evening. I'd like to introduce to you Steve Hamilton Clark. I'll tell you a little bit about Steven if you hadn't read his bio previously. Steve was born in Dubai and educated in Canada and France. Steve has 30 years of experience in global businesses that provide business intelligence, market information, and consulting services. Now, he spent 21 years in the Middle East and North Africa, much of it as the regional CEO for Kantar TNS, the world's largest research, insight, and consultancy. Steve is now an executive leadership coach, mentor, and board advisor with clients around the world in places like Bangladesh, Canada, Egypt, England, Greece, Portugal, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, UAE, and the USA. And he now lives in our nice little town of Chilliwack. So please, let's have a round of applause for Steve Hamilton Clark. Great to have you here with us this evening, Steve.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. Can you hear me okay? Just to begin with, yeah, okay. It's a pleasure. Thank you very much, Mel.
Yeah, it's great. So Steve and I hang out a little bit, play some squash. He's my neighbor, and he's a fun guy. And it's a privilege to have him here as our first guest this evening. So Steve, you've told me a little bit about your life, growing up, childhood. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, right from the time of growing up until the time maybe when you graduated from school? Tell us a little bit about that. There's a lot in there, I know, but it's a great story.
Yeah, I feel like saying once upon a time. Okay. Well, where to start? Well, here you go. A little bit of claim to fame here. My little piece. My birth certificate number is number 8. I was the 8th Brit born in Dubai. Wow. And as a teenager, I dated number 7 for a while. I will not tell you her name. Yes, older women, I heard that, whoever said that. So that's where it all started off, back in 1966, when there was 20 miles of paved road, 60 Western families, and a bunch of camels. So the last 50 years in Dubai, and you've probably seen the news as to the kind of city that it is today, has transformed phenomenally. And I was very fortunate to have seen that young and also as a business person and see that transformation happen and be part of that. So that's where it all started. And then we came to Canada and went to Quebec, stayed there for 3 years and then left. Back out to the Middle East, Nigeria, south of France. So very lucky. 15, 16, 17 years old, I did grades 10, 11, and 12 in Cannes. Absolutely. I saw Roger Moore. He passed away today, as you saw in the paper, bless his soul. But I saw him at the Cannes Film Festival and many other actors. So very fortunate to have been there. And all the travel, really, the adventure, which is really a core value of mine, opens up the mind. I've had so many people saying, Chilliwack? What are you doing in Chilliwack? And I'm going, we're all thinking the same thing. Yeah. Yeah, and it's a question of attitude. Reality is my business is global. I happen to be in Chilliwack. My parents live here. It's the main reason I came here. And now that I'm here, next to the Veta River, next to Mel, of course, squash player, it's just a gorgeous part of the world. So that was high school, and then I went to the University of Windsor. Dead silence. Windsor. Across the road from Detroit, and was invited to leave that university. Now, I have to underline the fact that there is a big difference between being kicked out and being invited to leave. Invited to leave means I had the option of staying. It was an invitation that I didn't have to accept. As it happens, I did. And if anybody's interested in that story, it's a fairly grim one, and it did teach me a few lessons in life. And ended up in the University of Ottawa, which it's funny how these things happen. Big events, you look back and I go, oh my God, this is really bad. And then I end up somewhere and it's all about perspective. And the University of Ottawa is very international and basically set the stage for going forward. So there you go, I try to bottom line it really quick. The main lessons and all of that, open-mindedness, less connections with people, and a lot of the success later on came through relationships. It's all about how you connect. It's all about how I connected. Right? He gave me a big hug, and I don't even know who he is.
Love you, brother.
Exactly.
There's a lot of love in the room. Yeah, very nice. Wonderful, Steve. Now, you were a youngster in Dubai.
Yeah.
What was that like? I mean, regarding things like language, culture, did you have friends, Arabic friends? What was that like?
Sure. So, do I speak Arabic? Let's take a poll. How many people think I speak Arabic? I don't. Well, enough to get by, you know. And it's because everybody wants to learn English. And in fact, the business language in Saudi, for example, is English. It'll change as more and more of the locals get into the private sector. But it's English. And so, as a child, everything was English. And I remember going to Sheikh Maktoum's stables and riding horses, because you could. And at the time, it was just palm leaves. Now it's untouchable, and it's $1 billion enterprise. That's what it was like. Everybody was accessible. Everybody was friendly. And they also drove on both sides of the road.
Whatever you moved?
They did. There were basically no roads. And I think they instituted the law in 1966, I think, or 67, that they would drive on the right-hand side. There you go.
Right side one day and left side the next.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So that was an interesting experience, and the beautiful part about it is the friendliness. I ended up in Saudi later on in life for my career, and I said, Saudi, you know, best time of my life. Met some of the best people ever, local and expats. So as a child, I've got very fond memories, and every time I go to Dubai, I try when I can to go into the spice souk. Because it just brings back so many memories. Those smells of all the different spices. It's just fabulous, and it just sort of brings me right back. So that's it. That's Dubai for me.
Wonderful.
The Dubai of today is very different.
Yeah, so tell us, how different is it?
It's always been a fast-paced place. It's just very fast-paced now. It really is 24/7. Whereas before it was more relaxed. I mean, we'd go out for lunch on a Thursday, which was the Friday equivalent, and not come back. You know, it was a small market. Everybody knew everybody. So to begin with, so certainly for the first 2-3 years I was there, we picked up the phone and took orders for business. That changed radically, and it became quite cutthroat. So the stress level, certainly for me, as I felt, changed a hell of a lot.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, on the other side, brilliantly, what Dubai is fantastic for is inspiration. Anything is possible in Dubai. Right? You want to put your mind to it, you can make it happen. And Dubai's proven that through the Burj Khalifa, Burj Al Arab, the Palm. Who would have thought? Right? It's just insane. And they did it. They built it and delivered. Everything's possible. That attitude, that belief, you either believe in Dubai or you don't. Everybody says, oh, they're going to go broke, they're going to go. Dubai just keeps on going. That inspiration is what kept me going in terms of being an entrepreneur in the business that I was in. Because it told me, you know, in Dubai, if you want to do it, you can. Sorry, I should be talking to you, but
No.
there's such an
Those are
attractive
good
audience.
They're a lot of fun.
They are.
So, you finished school at the University of Ottawa. What did you take in university?
The easiest courses possible. It happened to be marketing. So I took marketing and international business. If I had to do it again, I would take marketing and international business. It was a very, very good course, and again, it's mind-broadening. The one thing that I really liked was the marketing side in terms of being able to figure out what kind of messages touch people's hearts, and then that translates into winning marketing strategies. And marketing research, what I ended up in, is all about that. You know, getting into the heads of people, into their hearts, and then connecting. Yeah.
Great. So, You finish school. What happens next?
Whew. I get married and I get divorced. Which is pretty close. It was pretty close. 2 years. 2 years. And that's an important factor in my life. Again, life-changing events. Was it a bad one? No. I mean, it hit me hard. But I looked at it as an opportunity, really, to sort of say, well, what am I going to do? I'm 27 years old, 25 at the time, and I started scratching my head and sort of saying, you know what? Adventure. I was in Toronto at the time. And I said, well, what can I do for adventure? I'm going to change jobs. And so I did. And it was good. It was into sales, which I hadn't really done. But then I said, I'm missing something here. There's a bigger game to play. And so I said, I'm going to play the bigger game somewhere else. And basically packed up 2 suitcases, that's it, and moved to Saudi. That's it.
Did you have an opportunity to go to?
Had a job there,
Okay.
absolutely, to a place I did not want to go to. When you've been brought up in Dubai and you've lived in the Middle East, Saudi is seen as the dark side.
Okay.
You don't go there. The reality is that for every marketing dollar spent at the time, certainly 70, 80 cents of it was in Saudi. So getting the t-shirt was important, and I'm glad I did it.
So your idea of moving to Saudi,
Everybody knows the definition of fear, right?
Yeah.
False expectations appearing real. That's exactly what it was. You know, no liquor, no partying, harsh environment, expat community, compounds. It was anything but. It was the most friendly place I ever met. And culturally was able to connect and get into the culture, right? Because it was so different. Something that is a lot harder to do in Dubai, actually.
I see, okay.
So that was a big eye-opener. A little story for you. One of my big jobs there was to pass on consumer market research knowledge, how to do consumer research. And I had to teach ladies, Saudi ladies, which was delicate. So when I did it in meeting rooms and the door always stayed open. And I had to be careful of my behavior and whatnot. One lady in particular was doing phenomenally well. And I said, right, you've got to come along to the presentation and really take it all in and just be a fly on the wall. Okay. The next day, I'm in the chairman's office. And the chairman says, Steve, I understand you've insulted one of our Saudi ladies. She's 22, 23 years old. And I said, wow. Well, apparently you've called her an insect. And said she was a fly. And I went, oh, yes. And I explained, and he understood, and we moved on. And the lesson I learned from that wasn't so much about idioms. It was the fact that in the Middle East, everybody has contact all the way up to the top. Doesn't matter who you are. Back to the majlis, where you can go and meet the rulers and explain what you need, and they'll listen to you. And so this concept of being heard and hearing people was where that got first planted. So back to relationships. So that was a funny story, but it had a profound impact on me in terms of how I behaved afterwards.
I see, yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Did, what other sort of lessons did you learn, having come from North America, going back to Saudi?
Well, how to make beer.
Okay. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Craft beer, you're making it at home.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but 20 years ago, perhaps. A lot of misconceptions as to what Saudi is about. They're consumers just like everybody else. They have dreams just like everybody else. And so being able to tap into that psyche was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. And also visiting the country. There's so much to see. The camel races. The camel races are insane. Anybody been to a camel race? No, it's insane. They're up in Taif, they're about sort of an hour and a half out of Jeddah. Got to get a letter of permission to travel at the time. So I got one. And it says Steve Hamilton Clark, UK national, passport number, blah, 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 is allowed to travel to the east of Saudi, is allowed to travel to the west of Saudi, is allowed to travel to the south of Saudi, and can travel to the north.
Yeah.
That was my travel pay. So I could go anywhere. It was great. So I went up to Taif, and the Camel Races, it's a 10-kilometer track. 10 kilometers. These camels run for 10 kilometers. On the inside of the track are 4x4s, much like we have in Chilliwack, the open deck at the back, with couches in them, facing the track. And when the race starts, all the trucks take off at the same time. And how do they drive? Like this. Nobody's looking where they're going. They're just following the track. And there's dust everywhere. There's guys bouncing out of the thing. It was phenomenal.
Are these like the corporate boxes sort of thing? Like you can
Absolutely. Well, there were some red couches. Absolutely. So that was just a fabulous experience. And one of the fellows who was there just before the race, I have a picture I can show you one day. Had a carpet in front of his GIMPs, GMC, call it GIMPs. Everything's abbreviated. And there he was having tea, and I wanted to take a photo. And so I sat down, and I said, "Assalamu alaikum," he invited me down, we had tea, and at the end, I asked if I could take his picture, and he said yes. And he was a general in the armed forces, and you would never know it. He was just so friendly, so accommodating, so down to earth, so present, that was the epitome of what it was like living there. Yeah.
Nice.
Don't know what the lesson in that is, but certainly the lesson was about, friendliness, connections.
My perception of what someone in the Saudi military might be is not that, And so having said that, for many of us here are either entrepreneurs thinking about becoming entrepreneurs, perhaps been in business for a long time. And you mentioned fear, the perception of perhaps a lot of us, me included, of maybe living and working in Saudi or the Middle East might be, I'm not sure I want to go there. And so, this idea of thinking bigger or getting outside the box that we live in of fear. Maybe you could talk to us a little bit about that. Just thinking bigger and coming outside of, the little worlds that we live in and just sort of unleashing, getting outside of the bag,
Funnily enough, today, I have to go back to when I was 27. I'm more scared today than I was then.
Interesting.
I think about it more. Because I'm more experienced and I've seen more, I ask myself more questions, which is good. So there's a gift in that fear piece. And I do take myself back to when I just didn't know any different. I went for it. We went for it. And that's the lesson.
Yeah.
Don't hold back. Don't overthink it too much. Yeah, certain decisions have to be made. There's education, there's children. But the reality is that if I were to make a list of everything I was scared of, and then everything I was prepared to do, and then everything that would get me back to where I was originally, like all the mitigating stuff, and bring it back, chances are I could go back to the life I wanted to. So there's nothing to really be scared of.
Yeah.
So when I was 27 and I first went out to SAT, there was no fear insofar as what does the future hold. It was, let's just go and do it. Let's build it. And so, as an example, created a female research center in Saudi Arabia. It was the first of its kind for a research agency. The villa was in my name because women aren't supposed to work. And so, where's the risk? Well, the risk is I could get arrested. And as it happened, we ended up having a visit by the secret police. And they did actually write up a report that I was running a house of ill repute. Yeah. And so when I went in, I was living in Dubai at the time, when I went into Jeddah where this office was, I was half expecting to get arrested. Ended up meeting with the authorities and the net conclusion was, you know what, Steve? You're not allowed to be doing what you're doing. But that's not what we're upset about. What we're upset about is we didn't know you were doing it. So again, another lesson, anything is possible, certainly in the Middle East, anywhere, anything's possible in the world when you want to do it. And they were okay, and they let us continue to run the business because they knew about it, they understood what it was about. So again, that taught me another lesson. It's go for it, right? What's the worst that's going to happen?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Get arrested.
There's worse things after that in Saudi, isn't there? Getting arrested.
Well, the fortunate thing is, and the fortunate thing is, generally you get deported. So you're not there for long.
Okay. Thank you. Good stories. Great stories. Now, you did build up one of the largest market research firms in the Middle East and North Africa. How did that opportunity come about?
I had a great boss and a mentor who owned the company that I joined, and we were 40 strong. And he said, "Steve, I want you to come in and lead the business." I said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And he says, "I don't want you to do any market research." And I said, "Well, what's that about?" He says, "I've got tons of market researchers. I just haven't got any managers or leaders. I need someone to put some sense into it." So I was very fortunate to have a great mentor. Also very fortunate that he once called me into his office and closed the door. This is after being in the company for about 6-7 months. I'm the leader. And he said, "Close the door." Yeah. He says, "Look over your shoulder, Steve." I went, "You mean like now?" I went, "Yeah." He says, "What do you see?" I see, I see the door. He says, "What else do you see?" Well, I see nothing. He says, "Exactly. There's no one following you." Penny dropped. The way he did that was in such a friendly and caring manner that it made me appreciate that I needed to do something different. And sat down and basically came up with him with these 3 questions. Is what am I doing that's sort of getting in my way? What am I doing that's actually successful? And how can I adapt my behavior? And I've used that lesson ever since. And so that was the foundation to basically daily reflection.
Okay.
So finding 15, 20 minutes of quiet time and just reflecting and journaling on what went well, what didn't go so well, and what can I do differently. And that made a world of difference. And I'm very thankful to him for that. So that was the basis.
Yeah.
Afterwards, great people. Absolutely phenomenal. We had a family atmosphere. And that family atmosphere made that we had the crazy uncle, we had the wacky aunt, and all these different characters, but we all understood each other, and the values of the business and what we were trying to do, everybody implicitly understood it. The biggest challenge is when we became a community. So when we sort of crossed that 50, 60 mark, it got big. All of a sudden, I had to remind people what our values were. All of a sudden, we had to start thinking about what our vision and mission was, and then publish it. Top down, big mistake. And then learning from that and publishing it from the bottom up. And so scale changes everything. And in 2009, when we had the global economic crisis, our revenues dropped, from memory, some 25%. Our bottom line hit very low single digits. And we were in trouble. And interestingly, we had grown into this community very, very quickly. So the previous 4 years, we were growing between 15 to 34% a year.
Wow.
It was crazy.
Wow, yeah.
I mean, and guess what we were doing? Hiring people as fast as we could to fill in the spots, to service the clients, to make more money.
And a mix of Arabic people?
All nationalities. Okay. In the end, we had 28 nationalities in the business.
Huh.
Yeah.
That makes for a great potluck.
It certainly, well, we've had a few.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then 2009 hit, and realized that not only was the business financially wrong, we were morally bankrupt. We'd hired I had hired all the wrong people, a lot of the wrong people.
Just because you needed them now?
Yeah, do it now. And so when the money wasn't there, everybody was going, "Well, where's my paycheck? Where's the money? You're supposed to pay me." And we did, but it was also, and we have to go and get business together. And it became clear then that we had I had to change my leadership style to one that was a lot more communicative, a lot more consistent, So not the family make a decision one day for one person, make a different decision for the next person, and starting getting people involved in steering the company, and that's what we did. So we had a cultural change in the business, and within 10 months, we took our employee satisfaction scores, which was one of the lowest in the group globally. Yeah.
Only one way to go.
And, so, and by the way, I was speaking to somebody earlier today. It's good to take over a business when it's not doing so well, because nobody else wants it. Now, mind you, I had created this particular dilemma in terms of low employee satisfaction. Within 18 months, we were 7 points above the company average globally. And we did that through people with people. And I can talk a little bit more about that if you want in terms of lessons learned.
I was going to actually ask you, so you said you had to make some changes.
Yeah, in myself.
Where did that come from? Did you have a coach? Did you read a book? What did you do?
The big joke in the company is, oh, Steve, not another book. Because I'd hand them out. I'd share the knowledge. Interestingly, what I learned is unsolicited help is often unwelcomed. Unsolicited help is often unwelcomed. You can't help people do stuff that they don't see that they need to do. And so I banged my head against the wall a long time before I figured that one out. And when I had figured it out, that's when things changed again. It's, hey, what's the situation here? What is it that really matters to you? Why are you in this business? And how can I help you? And leave it over to them rather than me sort of prescribing. Yeah. And that was a big shift as well. The other thing too was share information broadly. Newsletters, coffee sessions with people, visiting offices, and just being available. Visibility and making sure that I was totally accessible, never had a closed door. In our open offices, I wanted to be in the open office, and the committee who were putting together the move into our new office, I wasn't on it. It was the team that decided how to design the offices. And Steve, you gotta have an office.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it sounds like you had a real flat structure. You didn't have a big hierarchy. People didn't feel like there was.
Oh, I'm sure people felt that there was one, perhaps.
Okay.
But that was an example of just sort of the accessibility piece. The other one was delivering on promises. So when we went through a tough time and I did have to let go of people, I said, and that's it. There will be no others. And I came under a lot of pressure from head office to, make the numbers better on the headcount. And I said, no, because the business is going to come back. And people have got to come from a long way, leave their country, with their families, come here. We owe it to them. Oh, no, I've got to make the bottom line better. Get it. It will come. And it did. So, keeping the promises. Another big thing, too, was rewarding failure.
Interesting.
Yeah. We had a great, 2009 was fantastic. Revenues dropped, we were dead in the water, and we were desperate for business. And so one of the teams managed to get this huge, at the time for us, $400,000 contract on something we'd never done before. It was geo-mapping. And we had to try and figure out, it was in Abu Dhabi, it was trying to figure out where people go to during the day so that they can put in public transportation. So we had to do all these interviews to find out where people are going. It was very complicated. And we also had to do spatial mapping in terms of finding all the locations. Long story short, we messed up the project royally. It was great. Yeah, I mean, totally, royally. It turned out to be in the end. So I ended up having to call the MD of this global company and saying, we can't deliver. We want to, and we've got the manpower. We're out of our depth. Interesting conversation, telling the truth, and telling the truth without any judgment. He listened and he said, okay, I'll send you some people and we'll get this done. And we ended up cooperating to deliver the project. We paid a 30% penalty, so we lost money on that project. Interestingly, they gave us another 3 projects afterwards. Okay. We didn't know that at the time when I rewarded the team that failed, who, by the way, one of them, he was staring at the screen so much for doing the latitude and longitude and all the geopositioning that he got a massive eye infection and ended up in hospital. Because this was for Abu Dhabi, I got them a stretch limo, drove them down to Abu Dhabi, got a helicopter, put them in a helicopter, and they toured Abu Dhabi in a helicopter so they could see all the different places they had mapped, and came back. I got into a little bit of trouble for doing that because I charged it to the project that was that had lost money. The reality is that because of that reward, they went out and got more business from this client, and we did it profitably. So a great example of rewarding failure, and it has to be done. You know, it's not a bad thing. It's okay to screw up.
Yeah. A great lesson, a great story. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, I was thinking, and that's about trying to inspire people to think a little bit bigger too, to stretch the envelope. Go for it.
It's okay to fail. It's good to tell the truth.
It's okay to fail once.
Yeah.
Sorry, I needed to add in that little word.
So after all this, after all these great adventures, here you are in Chilliwack now, starting a new chapter of your life. So tell us about that. I mean, you left, if you can tell us a little bit about leaving that position, as much as you feel comfortable in telling us about.
You do try.
Yeah, I do. As much as you feel comfortable in telling us, and starting something new.
Yeah, I'd outgrown the job, and the job had outgrown me. I wasn't engaged anymore. I truly went to work for a paycheck, and that was not healthy.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, recognized that. My boss recognized that. We discussed it and said, time to move on. And I said, absolutely. It is time, because the people in the business were suffering, and I was personally suffering as well.
Yeah.
I wasn't honoring my values. I was no longer living my vision, and I wanted to do something different. So I didn't open the chapter. I closed the book and then opened up a whole big book again, and jumped into it and started a business from scratch called
The 18th Camel.
the 18th Camel.
Coaching and consulting. Now you've got to tell.
Limited.
Oh, pardon me, limited.
Absolutely.
Without limitations.
Absolutely. Well said.
Yeah. Now,
Absolutely. Think
now
big.
These
Think
people,
big.
I'm sure, want to hear the story about the 18th Camel.
Do you want to hear the story about the 18th
Where in the
Camel?
world does that come from?
Okay, so back to my university days with marketing. I scratched my head and I said, I want something fun. I want something with a story. I want something that's memorable. Is the 18th Camel memorable? And I wanted something Middle Eastern. Those were my 4 criteria. And I found it in the 18th Camel story. And basically it goes like this. There was an elderly gentleman, Arab, in Egypt who had amassed a certain amount of wealth and had done well for himself. And this is going back a few hundred years. And he passed away. And he left his inheritance to his 3 sons. And the inheritance was 17 camels. To his eldest son, he left half. I see a few eyebrows going up. To his middle son, he left 1/3. More eyebrows going up. And to his youngest son, he left 1/9. And so the 3 boys really wanted to honor the father's wishes and started discussing it. But very quickly, it became a fairly toxic discussion. 2 against 1, all 3 in silos, not talking to each other, and then bickering. And it wasn't working. They came across the wise lady in the village who had heard about their story and inquired. And so the boys explained their situation, and she listened carefully. And after some thinking, said, hey boys, you can have one of my camels so that you can have 18 camels. And the boys said, you'll do that? And she said yes. And so they divided up the 18 camels. The eldest got half. Now, audience participation here. 9, absolutely. The middle son got 1/3, 6. And the youngest son got 1/9, 2. 9 plus 6 plus 2? 17 camels. Yeah, so this is about thinking the bigger game here. They were in a box. They were thinking in a box. They had blind spots. They had made assumptions as to what was possible. They were unable to look at it from different perspectives. And that story is the epitome of coaching. It's about perspectives. It's about balance. It's about seeing things from a different angle and helping people see things from a different perspective.
So after all these wonderful adventures on the other side of the world, what's it been like living in Chilliwack?
You want the honest?
Yes, I do. Please tell us.
Well, I came in August,
Yeah.
a couple of years ago, and the weather was gorgeous. The weather was a killer for me. That I found very difficult, very, very difficult. I hadn't lived in Canada in a very long time. I was used to waking up to blue skies early in the morning, every single day, guaranteed. And waking up to darkness and then darkness going to bed. That was very difficult. I've overcome it because it's now May. And the beauty of the place. Everybody's so friendly too. Chilliwack has got to be the friendliest place I've visited anywhere in the world. I was walking along the Vedder this morning. Most people say hello. Go to France? It's not going to happen, you know, as an example. No slight on the French, but it's just a different culture. So the friendliness here is unbelievable. When I was moving into the house, I had some problems with the telephone. The fellow who was doing the security helped me fix that. I needed to put an internet in. Telephone fellow helped me do that and didn't charge. I mean, it's just, yeah, I'll help you out. And I just found that fantastic. This sort of giving without expecting anything in return has had a really nice impact.
Wonderful.
So we live in a beautiful city. We're very lucky.
Yeah, it is a great place to live. Now, Steve, you have such a great story, and thanks so much for sharing all of this. If you could maybe offer us some thoughts on in terms of what you've learned over the years, some things that might be of assistance to us to hear tonight. What are some of the things that, as new entrepreneurs, people who have been in business for some time, what are some of the things that, some of the insights you could offer us that would be of assistance to us?
Good question. The first one is actually quite simple that comes to mind. It's, are you ready for this? You might want to actually write this one down because it's important. Yeah, got it, good. It's ask, ask, and ask. Ask until somebody says just no. And most people are scared to ask. And one of the things I learned is just ask. You'd be amazed what you can get. Can you help me put the internet down? When I bought my car here, I won't go down that one. When I bought my car, I'd actually paid for it and I'd asked for a few extras. And I got them without having to pay for them. Ask, you just don't know. Who would have thought after you're buying a car, you can get the extras? Ask, ask, ask. As an entrepreneur, absolutely have to do that. You know, we had to do that. And sometimes, don't ask, just do it, like setting up the Female Research Center. You know? But ask, ask, ask. That's probably one of the biggest ones. Don't be scared, all right? Another one for me, certainly in, and starting up now as well, and when I was with 40 people, it's all about relationships. Relationships trump tasks. Relationships trump tasks. You can scream at people and get things to do that, and da-da-da-da. But if you haven't got the relationships with your suppliers, with the people in the business, with people further up in the business, it just isn't going to work. And so spending a lot of time on relationship management, truly listening, really at that sort of that level 3 listening of explore and discover together, co-create, that pays huge dividends, especially when times are bad, especially when you make a mistake. Because I guarantee you will. I certainly made tons myself, but when the relationship is good, you get helped out. And a third one for you. Yeah. It's cliche and it's not. And now, my father gave me a picture of a stork with swallowing a frog. Maybe some of you have seen that picture, and the frog has got his hands around the throat of the stork. And it says, never give up. I've never really understood that until I actually had to go through it and had to deal with some very difficult situations, including getting people out of jail, because it happened. Market research is neither legal nor illegal in the Middle East. It's a gray area. I just never give up. I didn't understand what that meant until you really have to push to the end. And when you don't think that you got it in you, you do. I guarantee there's at least another 10, 15% that gets you over the finish line. So truly never give up. Those voices in the head, you can't do it, you're not good enough, that judge. I mean, I don't know if you've got it, but I certainly have it still today. Let them come and let them go. And that would be a real powerful one. You know, it's the optimist that gets to it at the end of the day. Also the opportunist, but the optimist. Stay optimistic. It'll happen. The runway can be long. As long as you've got your ladder up on the right wall, you'll make it. It'll happen. It'll happen.
Tremendous. Now, Steve, one of the things I've noticed about you, well, yes, there is. There's one of the things I've noticed about you. You've been here just a couple of years now, and you've really got yourself involved in the community. So tell us a little bit about that. Why is that important, other than the obvious things, such as it's just good to be involved in community?
I tell you what, something really upset me when I first came to Chilliwack. Was this response, Chilliwack? And I'm going, excuse me, there is so much talent in this town. It's unbelievable. And this is sort of backward mentality that people think we have. I didn't get that. And so getting involved and being on the steering committee for TEDx, which we just had on April, and Tim, who's one of the key leaders and made it all happen as well, is just sitting there, was a huge success. Huge success. And some of the people who came had fabulous ideas. The number of people who auditioned, got one speaker there as well in the background here. I mean, the number of people, we had, I think, on memory, some 50 odd people who auditioned over 3 different nights. It was a fantastic experience. Those are the kind of things that give people an opportunity to, one, step up, do something bigger. Speaking at a TEDx is not easy. Public speaking is a scary, scary thing. To give people that opportunity to do that in this town, and then to show the world the quality of thinking that exists here, absolutely. And that was the driving force behind it. The other thing is all about giving back. At the end of the day, that's what it's about, you know, and not expecting anything in return.
Thank you, Steve.